There are places in the world that never appear on tourist maps. Places so hidden that even experienced explorers can spend years searching without ever finding them. Some are protected by towering mountains. Others are concealed by dense forests or endless wilderness. But a few remain hidden for an entirely different reason. According to the people who have lived in these mountains for generations, this place simply doesn't exist most of the time. Deep inside an isolated limestone gorge lies a waterfall that appears only once every generation. For decades, the cliff remains completely dry. No stream flows through it. No river feeds it. To anyone passing by, it looks like an ordinary wall of weathered stone. Yet local stories tell of a powerful cascade that suddenly erupts from the mountain, transforms the entire canyon for a few brief days, and then disappears again as if it had never been there. Most people dismiss those stories as folklore, but every legend begins somewhere. Today, we're following a trail that has almost vanished with time. We're carrying old journals, faded photographs, and hand-drawn maps left behind by people who claim to witness the impossible. We don't know if the waterfall will appear. We don't know whether the clues are accurate. What we do know is that opportunities like this rarely come twice in a lifetime. If the stories are true, the mountain is about to reveal one of its greatest secrets. The morning begins long before sunrise. Cold air settles across the valley, while the peaks remain hidden beneath layers of drifting fog. The silence is broken only by the sound of boots against damp earth and the steady flow of wind moving through the pines. This landscape feels untouched. No roads, no signs, no crowds, just miles of wilderness stretching toward a narrow gorge that has guarded its mysteries for centuries. Before entering the mountains, we make one final stop at a weathered wooden cabin standing alone at the edge of the forest. Its owner is a retired ranger named Samuel, a man who has spent nearly his entire life exploring these valleys. Local residents describe him as the last living person who witnessed the hidden waterfall with his own eyes. Inside the cabin, every shelf is filled with journals. Their pages have yellowed with age, each one documenting changes in weather, wildlife, and mountain conditions over decades. Spread across a large wooden table are photographs, maps, and sketches drawn by hand, long before satellite imagery became common. Samuel carefully places one photograph in front of us. It shows an enormous waterfall pouring from a sheer limestone cliff. Mist fills the canyon, while sunlight creates faint rainbows through the spray. The scene is breathtaking. Then he points toward the same location on a modern map. Today, that cliff is completely dry. No river, no waterfall, nothing but bare rock. For years, people accused him of altering the photograph. Others insisted the location had been misidentified. Some believed the image came from another country entirely. Samuel never argued. Instead, he quietly returned to the mountains, adding another page to his journal every season. He explains that the waterfall doesn't follow a calendar. It doesn't appear because someone wants to see it. Nature decides when the conditions are right, and until then, the mountain remains silent. His notebooks reveal something unexpected. Every observation is recorded with remarkable precision. Rainfall totals, snowpack depth, ground temperature, spring runoff, river levels, dates of heavy storms, moon phases, even the direction of prevailing winds. At first glance, the information seems random, but page after page, a pattern begins to emerge. The years leading up to previous sightings all share one thing in common: long periods of unusually high groundwater, followed by rapid seasonal warming. Samuel believes the limestone beneath the gorge acts like a giant underground reservoir. Water slowly fills hidden chambers deep inside the mountain over many years. When those chambers finally reach a critical point, pressure forces the water through ancient fractures in the rock, creating a waterfall that lasts only until the reservoir empties again. Whether that explanation is correct remains uncertain. But enough unusual signs have appeared this year to convince us that the mountain deserves another visit. We spend the next hour preparing our equipment. Food, water, ropes, climbing helmets, emergency shelter, first aid supplies, camera batteries, drone equipment, GPS units. Although modern technology can make exploration safer, we know it won't solve every problem. Limestone gorges are notorious for unstable cliffs, hidden sinkholes, and sudden flash floods. A clear morning can become dangerous within minutes if storms develop upstream. The trail begins gently enough. Tall pine forests provide shade, while birds call from high branches overhead. Fresh animal tracks cross patches of soft earth, reminding us that we are visitors in an active wilderness. As the morning progresses, the landscape begins changing. The trees grow farther apart. The ground becomes rockier. Massive limestone walls rise on both sides, creating a corridor that narrows with every step. Eventually, the sunlight struggles to reach the canyon floor. The air becomes cooler, damp, still. Every sound echoes. Water drips somewhere in the distance, although no stream is visible. The feeling is impossible to ignore. It's as though the mountain is holding its breath. Our GPS begins losing signal beneath the towering cliffs. Satellite reception fades in and out until the screen displays little more than uncertainty. From this point forward, we rely on Samuel's hand-drawn maps and the natural landmarks described in his journals. Many of those landmarks no longer look the same. Winter storms have collapsed sections of the trail. Large boulders block old routes. Fallen trees force repeated detours. Progress slows to a careful crawl. Hours pass before we reach the first location marked in the journals. At first it seems unremarkable, just another section of gray limestone. Then we notice something unusual. Bright green moss covers a long strip of rock, extending nearly 20 feet up the cliff face. The surrounding canyon remains completely dry. The moss, however, appears healthy and thriving. Normally, plants like these require consistent moisture to survive, yet there is no visible source of water anywhere nearby. The discovery raises more questions than answers. A few steps farther, another clue appears. Thin white mineral deposits streak down the cliff, creating patterns that resemble dried waterfalls frozen in time. Minerals like these are often left behind when water repeatedly flows across rock surfaces over many years. But once again, there is no water, only silence. We continue deeper into the gorge. The walls become steeper. The trail narrows until there is barely enough room to pass. Above us, hawks circle against the bright sky, while small stones occasionally tumble from unseen ledges high overhead. Every corner reveals another strange detail. Smooth rock polished by ancient currents, rounded boulders sitting where no modern stream could have carried them, shallow pools carved into solid stone. Everything suggests immense amounts of flowing water once occupied this canyon. Yet today, the landscape remains dry enough to walk across without getting your boots wet. Late in the afternoon, we stop to rest near a towering cliff marked with unusually deep vertical fractures. Samuel studies the rock in complete silence. Then he kneels and places one hand against the limestone. For several long seconds, nobody speaks. Finally, he looks back toward us. Listen. At first we hear only the wind. Then something else. A deep, distant rumble. Not thunder, not falling rocks. It sounds almost like a river flowing somewhere far beneath our feet. The sound is faint but unmistakable. Hidden beneath thousands of tons of solid limestone, something is moving. And for the first time since this journey began, the impossible no longer feels impossible. If the mountain is truly awakening, then we may have arrived at exactly the right moment. The sound beneath the limestone doesn't disappear. If anything, it grows stronger. At first, it's easy to mistake it for the wind echoing through the narrow canyon. But the longer we stand in silence, the more distinct it becomes. It's rhythmic, constant, alive. Somewhere below us, an enormous volume of water is moving through the mountain. Samuel studies the cliff with the patience of someone who has waited decades for this moment. He doesn't rush ahead. Instead, he slowly traces the fractures running across the limestone with his hand. "Mountains always leave clues," he says quietly. "You just have to stop long enough to notice them." As we continue deeper into the gorge, the landscape begins to change in subtle ways. The air feels heavier. The temperature drops several degrees. A cool breeze drifts through the canyon, even though there is no visible opening ahead. It seems to be flowing directly out of the rock itself. Our drone rises above the canyon, revealing a maze of towering limestone walls stretching toward the horizon. From above, the gorge looks like a giant crack, splitting the mountain in half. Hidden among those cliffs lies the location marked in Samuel's journal. Reaching it is another challenge entirely. The trail has nearly disappeared. Loose stones slide beneath every step. Sharp limestone edges force us to move carefully, using ropes across exposed sections, where a single mistake could send someone tumbling into the canyon below. Hours pass before we reach a wide stone basin surrounded by cliffs on every side. According to the journal, this is where everything begins. Looking around, it's difficult to imagine why. The basin is completely dry. Not a single stream enters it. No river exits it. Only silent stone. Yet the evidence is everywhere. The walls are stained with pale mineral streaks, reaching nearly 30 feet above the ground. Massive boulders sit polished smooth, their surfaces rounded by powerful currents that clearly no longer exist. Nature is telling two different stories at the same time. One says this place has been dry for years. The other says unimaginable amounts of water once rushed through here. As afternoon turns toward evening, clouds begin gathering over the mountain peaks. The light softens. The wind fades. The canyon becomes strangely quiet. Even the birds disappear. Samuel notices something first. Tiny droplets, at first only a few, barely visible. Small beads of water begin forming along the cracks in the limestone wall. Nobody speaks. Every camera starts recording. The droplets slowly grow larger before sliding down the rock. For the first time in decades, water is emerging from the mountain. The process is almost impossible to notice unless you're watching carefully. Minute after minute, the moisture spreads across the cliff face. Dark patches appear where dry stone had stood only moments before. The smell of wet earth fills the canyon. Fresh mineral scents drift through the cool air. It's as if the mountain has taken its first breath after decades of silence. Then something remarkable happens. Plants begin responding almost immediately. Moss that had appeared dry only hours earlier turns bright green. Tiny ferns hidden in narrow cracks begin to unfold. Delicate flowers no larger than a fingernail seem to awaken from nowhere. Life has been waiting. Not for days, not for months, but for years, perhaps even decades. The ecosystem hidden within this gorge has evolved around an event so rare that most people will never witness it. The mountain isn't simply releasing water, it's reawakening an entire world. As daylight fades, the droplets become trickles. Thin streams snake across the limestone, weaving together before disappearing into shallow channels carved into the rock. The sound changes. Instead of isolated drips, we hear hundreds of tiny streams flowing together. The canyon begins amplifying every movement of water. The echoes grow louder, deeper, more powerful. The air fills with cool mist. Visibility begins to decrease. Our camera lenses fog almost instantly. Every surface becomes slippery. Walking now requires complete concentration. Night falls quickly inside the gorge. We set up a temporary shelter beneath an overhanging section of rock, while continuing to monitor the cliff throughout the night. Very little sleep comes. Every hour someone checks the cameras. Every hour the flow has increased. Just before dawn, a low vibration passes through the ground. Not violent, not destructive, just enough to feel beneath our boots. The sound beneath the mountain has become unmistakable. It's no longer distant. It's directly behind the cliff. Pressure has been building for years inside hidden chambers beneath the limestone. Now it seems to be reaching its limit. The first rays of sunlight spill into the canyon as a deep cracking sound echoes across the gorge. Everyone freezes. A narrow fracture running down the center of the cliff suddenly darkens. Water begins pouring from it with surprising force. Within seconds, the trickle becomes a stream. The stream becomes a torrent. Then, without warning, the mountain releases everything it has been holding back. A deafening roar explodes through the canyon. An enormous wall of crystal-clear water bursts from the limestone, crashing into the basin below with incredible force. Mist surges into the air, rising hundreds of feet before drifting through the morning sunlight. Rainbows appear within the spray. The dry canyon transforms into a living river almost instantly. Water races through channels that had remained empty for decades. Pools fill in minutes. Small waterfalls form along the canyon walls. The roar is so powerful that conversation becomes impossible. We can only watch. Every prediction, every journal, every story, every faded photograph, they were all pointing to this single moment. Nature has revealed one of its greatest hidden spectacles. The waterfall is magnificent, far larger than we imagined. Nearly 200 feet of uninterrupted water crashes from the cliff, sending waves across the stone basin below. The force is overwhelming. Standing nearby, you can feel the ground trembling beneath your feet. Cold spray covers everything. The air temperature drops instantly. What was once a silent canyon has become one of the loudest places we've ever experienced. As extraordinary as this discovery is, Samuel isn't looking at the waterfall. He's staring towards something hidden behind it. His expression changes, almost as though he has remembered something. Without taking his eyes off the rushing water, he quietly says, "This isn't why my father brought me here." Confused, we follow his gaze. Behind the curtain of water, barely visible through the mist, is the dark outline of an opening in the cliff. A cave, one that has remained completely hidden until the waterfall returned. Whatever secrets this mountain has protected for generations, they aren't in the waterfall itself. The waterfall crashes into the basin with a force that makes the entire canyon tremble. Mist hangs so thick in the air that the cliffs disappear behind a curtain of white. Every surface glistens beneath a constant spray, and the roar of the water drowns out every other sound. Yet Samuel isn't looking at the waterfall. He's looking beyond it. Following his gaze, we begin to notice something hidden within the rushing water. Behind the falling curtain is a dark opening carved into the limestone, a cave. For decades, no one could have seen it. The cliff was dry, the entrance sealed by shadows and impossible to reach. Now, with the mountain awakened, the waterfall has revealed a passage that has remained hidden from the world. The crossing isn't easy. The rocks beneath our boots are slick with algae, and the force of the spray makes every step uncertain. We secure ourselves with ropes, moving slowly along the cliff until we reach the narrow ledge behind the cascade. The moment we step through the wall of water, everything changes. The deafening roar becomes strangely distant. The cave is cool, silent, and still. It feels as though we've crossed into another world. Our headlamps sweep across smooth limestone walls, shaped by water over thousands of years. Mineral deposits shimmer under the light, creating patterns that resemble frozen waterfalls made of crystal. Then the beams stop. Carved into the rock are dozens of symbols: circles, mountains, flowing lines, human figures standing beneath what appears to be a waterfall. These are not random scratches. They were placed here deliberately. Generation after generation, someone returned to this cave to leave a record behind. Nearby, we discover the remains of ancient fire pits blackened by charcoal. Flat stones have been arranged into simple seats, and fragments of hand-shaped tools lie partially buried beneath layers of mineral deposits. This wasn't merely a shelter. It was a place of observation, a place where people gathered to witness something they knew would return. Samuel quietly opens the oldest journal he has carried throughout the journey. Inside is a sketch made by his grandfather. The drawing matches the carvings almost perfectly. For a long moment, no one speaks. The mountain has connected people separated by generations through the same remarkable event. Samuel finally breaks the silence. "My grandfather told me this place wasn't ours to own," he says softly. "It was ours to protect." As a child, he never understood what those words meant. Now he does. The secret was never the waterfall itself. The real secret was restraint. Every generation faced the same choice: reveal the location to the world, or preserve it for those who would come after. In an age where almost every corner of the planet has been photographed, mapped, and shared online, the idea of protecting a place simply by remaining silent feels almost unimaginable. Yet standing inside this hidden chamber, surrounded by evidence of those who came before us, the decision suddenly makes sense. Not every wonder becomes greater when millions of people visit it. Some survive precisely because they remain unknown. Hours pass as we document every detail: the carvings, the mineral formations, the shape of the cave, the unusual moss thriving near the entrance, where the constant mist provides just enough moisture for life to flourish. Outside, the waterfall continues to thunder through the gorge. But by the following morning, subtle changes begin to appear. The flow isn't quite as powerful. The mist no longer reaches as high above the cliffs. The pools that formed across the canyon stop rising. Samuel notices it immediately. "It's beginning," he says. "The mountain is closing the door." Throughout the day, the waterfall slowly weakens. What had been an unstoppable wall of water becomes a series of powerful streams. The roar softens. The vibrations beneath our feet fade. Birds return to the trees. Sunlight reaches sections of rock that had remained hidden beneath the spray. The temporary world that had come alive around the waterfall begins to retreat. The bright green moss starts drying at the edges. Tiny flowers close once more. The cool air grows warmer. The canyon slowly remembers what it has been for decades: silent. By the third morning, only a narrow ribbon of water remains. The great cascade that transformed the gorge has nearly vanished. Standing in the same place where we first witnessed the eruption, it's difficult to believe what happened here only days earlier. One final stream slips over the limestone edge, then another, until eventually, nothing. The cliff stands dry once again. The waterfall has disappeared. Only faint mineral streaks and damp stone remain as proof that anything extraordinary ever happened. Without the photographs, the recordings, and our own memories, no one would believe the story. Before leaving, Samuel closes his journal and carefully places a small handwritten note inside. It contains the date, the weather, A simple description of what we witnessed. Nothing more. He smiles and slips the journal back into his backpack. This isn't the end of the story, he says. It's the beginning of someone else's. As we climb out of the gorge for the final time, the mountains seem unchanged. The forest is quiet. The wind moves gently through the pines. No sign remains of the waterfall that shook the canyon only hours before. Nature has reclaimed its secret. Perhaps that is exactly how it should be. Some places aren't valuable because they are famous. They're valuable because they remind us that the world can still surprise us. Because even in an age of satellites, drones, and digital maps, there are moments that refuse to appear on demand. Moments that belong not to us, but to time itself. Maybe the greatest adventures are not about conquering nature. Maybe they're about earning the privilege of witnessing it. We came searching for a legendary waterfall. What we found was something far more meaningful. A reminder that the rarest wonders are often the ones that cannot be possessed, only respected. And somewhere beneath these ancient limestone mountains, water is already beginning its long, silent journey once again. Patiently filling hidden chambers, waiting for the day the mountain chooses to awaken, and another generation arrives to listen.